we have a group of 4 teams now, Andy, in the SEC that are kind of indistinguishable from one another. They've all beaten each other. They're all 2-loss teams in the SEC, and Georgia's right back in the thick of things.
Yeah, and it is going to be hard to parse those teams. Hard for you and I as we do bracketology and bubble watch. Hard for the committee as they rank them next week. And this makes the bubble a lot more interesting. I think probably there were a lot of teams around the country hoping Tennessee would win tonight because it would make this a little easier. But it's not going to be easy because you've got Georgia that had this win against Tennessee, that had that win against Texas. You've got Ole Miss that had that win against Georgia. You've got Alabama that has a win against Georgia. Like, all of that is going to be considered. Texas A&M and Texas are on a collision course.
Yeah. So you have Texas and Texas A&M, right, that are on a collision course. But right now, I see a collection of 5 teams in the SEC, Andy, that I could not make a rational case for leaving out of the playoff. You have Texas.
Mm-hmm.
You have Ole Miss. You have Georgia.
Yep.
You have Alabama, and you have Tennessee. Those are the 5. And
right.
I don't know how you're going to approach this when you get to bracketology at 2 a.m, but you might be throwing all 5 in. You might not. I don't know where you stand on this, but whoever gets left out, if they do get left out, is going to be a team that feels screwed.
Right. The question is, who do you leave out if you put all those in? And then remember, A&M can win its way in by beating Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Or into the conversation, if nothing else. But you're right, because who do you leave out at that point? Do you leave out 11-1 Notre Dame? Do you leave out potential 11-1 Indiana? 11-1 Penn State? Like, who are you leaving out? Because
that's that Wendy saucy take from 3 weeks ago is coming to life, and I didn't know it would come to life this way. As a result of everybody in the SEC being a viable option, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So, if you have been a person who's made a statement that 1-loss Indiana is in no matter what, or that the ACC can get 2 teams in potentially, or I think you need to look around a little bit, because there are going to be a lot of people in the North, I think, who are pretty upset about the way that this is going to go, because, we haven't seen them operate in this 12-team, playoff committee. And I know there's chatter about whether or not the SEC is getting an unfair benefit of the doubt with all these teams beating each other. But I know how it's going to operate when these people show up in Grapevine to put this bracket together. And if we get to a point at the end of the year where you have, 5 teams in the SEC with 2 or few losses in the conference, and they've all beaten each other, you're going to have a really hard time putting a team in that doesn't have any quality wins. And, that's, it's like the Indiana can kick rocks thing that you just put up there is going to start. So I tweeted about this last week at 2 a.m. when we were in Mississippi, and it's true. It's like Indiana has a huge game next week. Like, the teams that are in non-SEC conferences and non-Big Ten with Oregon and Ohio State's schedule should be crapping their pants right now, because there's going to be a very heavy SEC playoff if things continue this way.
Yeah, and I am curious to see how this is, because I don't know if it's going to be a heavy SEC playoff. I don't know what it's going to look like. I just know if there's 11-1 Big Ten teams left out in favor of 10-2 SEC teams, it's going to piss off the Big Ten. If there are 10-2 SEC teams left out that feel like they played a tougher schedule than the 11-1 Big Ten teams, that's going to piss off the SEC. I think the result probably is a 14-team playoff in 2026, which we already know they're headed toward. And then they'll also be probably trying to get guaranteed bids for the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, here's the thing. If you did 3-3 guaranteed bids, they'd both be getting those. The question if it's going to be 4-4, because that's what they're going to go for.
Yeah, 4-4. Listen, I don't know that the SEC is going to end up like this every year. Maybe it will. Maybe this is the new normal. But when you have the most teams in a concentrated league who compete in talent acquisition and program investment, to win a national championship all in the SEC, like you're bound to find yourself in a place where if you're trying to find a bunch of really good teams, then this is what you're going to get. Now, it might be harder to make that excellent one team that's levitating above everybody else that we've had in the past. But, Texas invests a lot in football. LSU invests a lot in football. They're not even in the discussion right now. A&M does. I don't have to go down the list, Andy. There's a lot of teams that are built and equipped to go 10-2 in this league. And I know that it's a wider range of teams that are involved, and I know that the schedules are going to be tougher. But, the teams that get the best draws might even be in that mix. Like a Mizzou, for instance, was pretty close to being in this mix tonight if they didn't blow it at the end of their game. Like there are going to be teams in the SEC that aren't in that like golden 7 that can get to 10-2 in good years and favorable draws. So like, I don't know that it's easy to, get past what's happening here. I think this is going to be the norm because the truth of the matter is, Andy, you don't have to be a league of excellent teams for this to happen. Like, and I don't know that anybody in the league is unquestionably the best team in college football this year, like it has been in so many years past. I think that they have a lot of really good teams, but deciphering those is going to be an issue this year and into the future.
Well, I think Georgia is the best example of this because the Georgia team we saw tonight can beat anyone. The can get in the playoff, can beat anybody they see in the playoff, can win enough games to win the national championship. The Georgia team we saw last week against Ole Miss, and look, Ole Miss is awesome. But the way Georgia played against Ole Miss last week, if they play like that in the playoff, they're going to lose to pretty much anybody they'd see. So that's the thing. There is nobody who is that consistent this year. And we're going to talk about Oregon in a second. We saw Oregon struggle on Saturday against a team that's not that good. So it is going to be fascinating to see who they pick. But then once those games start in the playoff, I do feel like pretty much anything can happen.
Yeah. And I with what Rhett Lashley said this past week, and I don't know if we talked about it on our show. We might have done it on JD's. We did a lot of hours.
We did a lot of shows. So.
Just forgive me if I can't recall what we talked about and when we did. But Rhett Lashley's quote about how the ACC is being disrespected, right? I saw a lot of that on Twitter today in terms of LSU's loss to Florida that you were at, because LSU was a quasi-quality win for a lot of the teams that are in the mix here still. Like Alabama reasserted itself as a team that should be reckoned with by blowing out LSU, and then LSU turns around and loses to Florida. And this was done in the context of Louisville's loss today. It's like, well, LSU loses, and that's kind of a glue team that a lot of people are hanging their resume on, and no one seems to bat an eye when they lose to Florida. But
I don't think anybody's hanging their resume on LSU anymore. I mean, at this point, like the LSU fans, I had an LSU fan friend text me after that game, go, I think they may finish 6-6 at this rate. So there is a lot. The thing is, it's only 2 more weeks in the regular season, but there's a lot that can happen because we're still making a lot of assumptions. Like at least one of these SEC teams that we're talking about is going to lose because 2 of them are going to play each other. But it's entirely possible that some of the other ones lose as well.
Well, refresh me on the schedules here, Andy. So we know that when you say they play each other, you're referring to
Texas A&M,
right? So I don't even think that I'm even viewing A&M in that cluster of 5. So if
they beat Texas, they're in it.
If they beat Texas, no, I know, but let's just assume they're not in the cluster of 5 that are hard to rank in the top 10 right now. Is all I'm saying. I'm not saying they don't have a chance.
Yeah, they're easy. You leave them out for now, and they have to win their way in.
They're out for now, and they have to win their way in. Exactly. So they're not in that cluster that we're having a hard time with. But I'm not a schedule. I don't have the beautiful mind that you do that just recalls everything off the top of their head. So I need you to help me out here. But do any of those teams outside of Texas in that cluster of 5 play a team that they are going to be in a game with? Don't all of them have very favorable endings to their schedule, or am I forgetting something?
Ari, did you think Oregon would be in a game with Wisconsin?
No, but I'm saying it's highly likely, though, that the teams that have 2 losses, or it seems like
it's highly likely that some crazy shit happens. That's what's highly likely. Texas A&M and Alabama have to play Auburn. Auburn has 1 SEC win, but they've played a lot of 1-possession games. Texas plays Kentucky. Kentucky has one SEC win. It's against Ole Miss on the road. Like, weird things can happen and probably will.
Okay, but just stick with me on this here for a second, Andy. So Tennessee has to play Vanderbilt, which I guess is a weird, quasi-weird situation. But they've got Vanderbilt and UTEP left. Georgia, their remaining games are against Massachusetts and Georgia Tech. Alabama has to play Auburn, so we know that that's a rivalry game and it's tricky. But Alabama's got Oklahoma and Auburn, two games that they should be favored in. Again, like you said, weird things can happen. Who's the last team that I didn't just mention? Ole Miss. Let's go look at Ole Miss now.
Ole Miss has Florida and Mississippi State. They're at Florida next week, and then Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl.
So, assuming for the sake of the exercise that Texas beats A&M, which isn't a safe assumption, you need a massive upset of some sort for that cluster to be broken up. I'm not saying it won't happen. It's college football. It probably will, but you need a jaw-dropping, weird-ass game in order to make this clearer, which, by the way...
You need the Auburn Tigers to show up one of these weeks. Yeah. That's what you need.
So is it okay to say that it's likely that we're going to end up with 5 teams from the SEC in that cluster at the end of the year? Or do you think that's unlikely? And also, too, we talk about the beauty of college football and how the unpredictable happens, but the beauty of college football in terms of unpredictability doesn't always have to manifest in losses. Like, the beauty of college football is it's a clusterfuck, and at the end of the year, this cluster, see what I'm doing with the words there? Will all be there. That's college football too. It doesn't just have to be an upset. Like, that complete abomination of a situation that nobody's going to be able to navigate is exactly like people are. How many years and how many decades have we spent coming up with chaos scenarios in November that don't come true?
Oh, I know. Well, so after Florida beat LSU, our guy Matt, who often comments in the chat here, tweets at me, says the 8-way tie is dead, along with the 7-way tie. And then it looked like Missouri was going to beat South Carolina, and then South Carolina comes back and wins, and that ends the 7-way tie. So long live the 6-way tie in the SEC.
Andy, who are the 2 teams? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. You might not know, but who controls their own destiny to be in the SEC championship right now?
Texas and Texas A&M, and only one of them is getting in.
And then what? Then you have to go down a rabbit hole of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory to figure out who else plays in it.
Yes. And it may be losing to Kentucky's the thing that kills Ole Miss in that one.
Okay, so but like if Texas wins, then there's a whole new set of circumstances that come into play, and if Texas A&M wins, then it's a different set of circumstances. I'm understanding that, right?
Texas A&M wins makes it far more spicy.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this because this is compelling. It really is, and like also too, I'm going to put you on the spot again.
Okay,
which one of those 6 teams in the top 6 there, that graphic you're looking at, Andy, is the best?
I have no idea. Which day is it? Where are they playing? I don't know.
They've all had their moments, and they've all had their wins.
And they've all looked bad at times. Yeah. Let's put that graphic back up. Put the SEC standings back up. Let's go. Okay. Texas lost to Georgia, has no good wins. Texas A&M lost to Notre Dame, got kind of blown out at South Carolina. Georgia blown out at Ole Miss. Tennessee just got handled by Georgia and lost to Arkansas. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky. All of them have their warts. Now let's go down the good side. Texas has not lost any of those bad teams other than the really good team they played in Georgia. Texas A&M destroyed Missouri. I'm not sure what else we got on it. The LSU win looking a little rickety right now. Georgia has beaten Alabama, has beaten Tennessee. Tennessee has beaten Alabama. Alabama has beaten Georgia. Ole Miss has crushed Georgia. They've all looked good, really good at times. They've all looked like world beaters at times.
Andy, just pick one. Who do you like the best? Who would be your horse right now?
I don't know. Like the Georgia we saw tonight, I'd take them. The Ole Miss we saw last week, I'd take them.
You know, I might
Tennessee we saw against Alabama, I might take them. The Alabama we saw against Georgia and LSU, I might take them.
I might sound nuts here, Andy, so save me because I'm going to pick a horse.
Okay.
I think I'm going Ole Miss, man.
I think that's a good one because teams evolve as seasons go on, and they look like they're playing murder ball right now.
It's quarterback, lines, receivers to me. Yeah, I like their package.
So, Jim, Andy, are you saying that none of them deserve a playoff bid? They are all fatally flawed. Jim, probably 11 of the 12 playoff teams will be flawed in some way, shape, or form. Maybe all 12. Welcome to the new world of college football. There are no flawless teams. Rimsey in the chat. Ari, he's asking you, do you think Ole Miss would blast Indiana?
I have no context of how good Indiana is yet.
We'll find out next week. That game's going to be awesome. Indiana, Ohio State's going to be awesome. Kurt Signetti, new contract in Indiana. He's staying there. It's going to be great. So the SEC may or may not sort itself out. It may make itself even messier. And that's honestly great. Love it. Love it.
But that's the game. You already see it in the chat, though. That's the game that's going to happen at the end of this month, Andy. How would Indiana fare in the SEC? Like, it's already starting.
Yeah, if Indiana had Georgia's schedule, which, by the way, there is
that's not fair. But you picked the hardest
committee
one.
Looks at call. Yeah, there is a stat the committee looks at called strength of record. That's how would the average team do against this team's schedule? How did this team do versus how the average team would do against this schedule? And so I think you're going to see Georgia, probably Alabama, definitely Oregon will have a very good strength of record. Like Oregon may have the best one, depending on how things go.
Yeah. I mean, Georgia's got the worst and hardest draw in the SEC, right? So the fact that they are
3 brutal road games.
So when we're done here, I'm going to have to fill out this top 10, and I have no idea how I'm going to fill out mine. And it's like part of me is like, I'm a week removed away from watching Georgia look completely pedestrian in person. And then on the other hand, I look at a team that has the collection of the 2 best wins in college football, maybe the best, most respectable losses in college football, and a team that just beat Tennessee. And they played by far the hardest schedule of anybody in the SEC. It's like A&M is in this cluster because they were the beneficiary of an easy path. Right. Or as easy you can get in the SEC. Like Georgia got to the same point. And Texas is
too.
Yeah, Georgia got to the same point as the rest of these teams by playing a much more difficult schedule. So do you reward that, or do you penalize the team for losing 2 games, one of which was pretty embarrassing in the way I think performed? So
I think you look at the teams and you decide, and nobody wants to hear this because this is the eye test, unfortunately. But you look at the teams and you decide who do you think would actually win games in the playoff? Who has a better chance of winning games in the playoff?